Um, Welcome to the convening. If you're here for a session on Bank On, you found the right room. My name is Rebekah Bassett. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the Family Economic Opportunity Program Director at Casa of Oregon. I'm also here representing the Oregon Community Reinvestment Coalition and our effort to hold banks specifically accountable to reinvestment in Oregon. One way that banks and credit unions can invest in underserved communities is through participation in Bank On. Our panelists today are going to talk with us about unbanked and underbanked people and why we need a Bank On product. They'll share with us the value and power of participation, both from the financial institution's point of view and from the perspective of other stakeholders. They'll walk us through the design and decision-making components of the account and share their expertise getting decision makers to the table to adopt and implement a Bank On product. Lastly, they'll share what is going on with Bank On Oregon locally, how to get involved, and how to make sure community members know about the products. To get a sense of who's in the room today, it'd be helpful if I could get a show of hands. And if you're watching virtually, put in the chat if you are representing a bank. Raise a hand. Lovely. If you're representing a credit union, raise your hand. A community organization. Great. Other stakeholders. Great. Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'm fortunate to introduce our esteemed panel of experts. Always wanted to say that.
Always wanted to be called that.
Rachel Hall is the Financial Empowerment Analyst for Urban League of Portland. Craig Vadiat is the Financial Education and Outreach Coordinator with the Oregon Division of Financial Regulation. That's a mouthful. Guillermo Sandoval is the Financial Inclusion Director for Umpqua Bank. And Ken Riddell is the Assistant Vice President and Regional Branch Manager for Unitas Community Credit Union. All right, our first question, we're going to have Rachel kick us off. Why are people unbanked and underbanked?
Thank you, Rebekah. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to speak to the why. Why are folks unbanked and underbanked? America's historical past for people of color pursuant to racial equity has been at a disadvantage from the very beginning. From the subjection of chattel slavery to structural racism and denial of human dignity and voting rights and anti-literacy laws, redlining and eradication of property, and injustices of penal systems and devastation of the race massacre of the Black Wall Street, people of color have lived and died from a disadvantaged point. And how from doing this from a disadvantaged point impact equity around ever-growing abyss of generational wealth gaps. Historically, financial institutions in the United States has not served people of color effectively or fairly. According to the FDIC, about 5.4% of the population don't have bank accounts. Once the data is disaggregated by race and ethnicity, over 16% of Native Americans are unbanked. 14.8% of African and Black Americans and 12.2% of Hispanic people are unbanked. Even today, people of color have less access to credit, financial education, and pay higher interest rates of loans, and are less likely to receive venture capital as compared to white counterparts. When one takes a deeper dive into understanding the structural racism and redlining and systematic oppression, race disparities in banking equity is ghastly, overwhelming, and painfully problematic for people of color. The FDIC surveyed the unbanked and underbanked, and the household key findings were that 5.9 million people are unbanked in 2021, meaning that one person in the household didn't have a checking or savings account from a bank or even a credit union. The unbanked rate by household characteristics, consistent with the results from previous surveys, the unbanked rate in 2021 varied considerably across the US population. For example, households less educated and Black households, Hispanic households, working households with disabilities, and single mother households. The difference in the unbanked rate between Black and white households, between Hispanics and white households in 2021 were present in every single income level. For example, among households with income between $30,000 and $50,000, 8% of Black households, 8.1% of Black households and households that are Hispanic were unbanked, compared to only 1.7% of white households. For working households with disabilities, the unbanked rate in 2021 was 14.8%, which is much higher than the unbanked rate among working age households without disabilities, which was 3.7%. For single mother households, the unbanked rate in 2021 was 15.9%, so much higher than the unbanked rate among married couples households, which was 1.8%. In the unbanked households, some of the reasons for not having a bank account were they don't have enough money for the minimum balance requirements, was cited for 21% of the unbanked households as the main reason of why they didn't have an account. Another reason was they didn't trust the banks, which was the second cited reason why they didn't have accounts in this 2021 report, and that was 13.2%. And another one was avoiding banks and more privacy was cited as the third reason for not getting an account, and that was 8.4%. 3 in 10 unbanked households in 2021, which represents 29%, cited that it was related to fees and the minimum balance, and the bank account fees were too high, and bank accounts fees are too high and unpredictable. Historically, financial institutions have a history of exclusion and predatories, and according to the research by PolicyLink, as the current structure of financial service industry makes financial inclusion, access to using affordable financial products and services that meet the needs of people very difficult for low-income people and moderately income folks. So financial exclusion, it exasperates and creates barriers for economic opportunities and mobility. And the financial wealth gap will continue to grow if this is not proactively closed. Financial freedom and wealth creation cannot be achieved without access to securities provided by bank accounts. Bank relations and essential to building consumers' credit files and also their scores. A bank can also have a safety for storage of intergenerational wealth. Alternatives to financial services such as check cashing and services for payday loans carry high transaction fees and costs and do not help to build consumers' credit scores. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Craig Vadiat.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, Rachel did a great job in explaining a lot of the statistics behind why folks are unbanked. Bank on Oregon, which is a coalition of financial institutions, nonprofit organizations, as well as government agencies, hosted a listening session in 2021 with 11 culturally specific organizations, so serving folks that are traditionally underserved. And that was a really valuable experience. You know, we heard why, as Rachel already mentioned, there are those reasons around banking being too expensive, the banking fees being too unpredictable, maybe not having the right types of identification necessary to open an account, or maybe having an experience with a financial institution in the past that was really negative, right? And so along with those reasons, we also heard from, again, these organizations that serve different communities in Oregon that folks in financial institutions don't look like their communities. When they are told no, when looking for an account, let's say, there's no educational piece. It felt like it was very much a no without any sort of mentorship or guidance. And that's a real turnoff to communities, as you can imagine. And then there are accessibility issues. So you have things like information not provided in different languages, folks who maybe don't speak different languages within the financial institutions. And then also things around providing culturally relevant and culturally sensitive customer service, the training that needs to take place at financial institutions to really understand and empathize with folks who might be outside of the, might be outside of the financial system looking in. And as Rachel mentioned, it is expensive to be unbanked as well as to be banked when you are low to moderate income for a lot of folks. And that's kind of why Bank On provides a solution and really kind of makes that accessibility a possibility. It reduces that barrier. The Brookings Institution estimates that people will spend $40,000 in their lifetime to pay for alternative financial services, such as check cashing or payment services. And that is very expensive. The alternative, though, is unfortunately has been expensive banking products, right? Overdraft fees hit those folks who are just able to keep a positive balance, right? They hit those the hardest. And again, that's where Bank On really provides a solution for folks. And we're excited to share more about that today.
Thank you both. Craig, I'm wondering if you could share more about what's being done to overcome barriers to banking access.
Yeah, so this is the pitch for Bank On. And it's a great pitch. So in 2012, the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund was founded by Michael Bloomberg, former mayor of New York City. And the CFE fund is the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund. They are kind of the national organizers of the Bank On movement. And so the Bank On movement is really a push to get financial institutions, both credit unions and banks, to offer an account that is safer and affordable for low to moderate income people. That's really kind of in a nutshell what the Bank On movement is all about. And the CFE fund worked to put together account standards that will work for both financial institutions, right, to develop relationships with customers that maybe they were excluding previously, right? This is kind of welcoming folks into the banking system. And it's profitable for financial institutions, but it also opens the door for folks that have historically been excluded. Those standards were put together in collaboration with the FDIC's model safe account template. So this is something that the FDIC had kind of put forth, and the CFE fund kind of jumped on and said, yeah, we can put an account together that meets a set of standards here, and it's going to work for both consumers and for financial institutions. So what are those standards? Well, the one I think is most appealing to all folks is that an account that meets this national standard cannot have any overdraft fee. And we know how expensive that can be for folks, right? One transaction or one day could lead to 3 or 4 overdrafts of $35 each, right? How do low income folks keep an account open when there are overdrafts in place? Other features include a maximum of $5 monthly service charge if the charge is not waivable. So again, kind of on the lower end. And then a maximum of $10 if that monthly fee is waivable, right? Through maybe direct deposit, or let's say a transfer from your checking account to your savings account. The maximum overdraft fee is, the maximum ATM fee for out-of-network ATM use is $2.50. And there are a host of other standards that, again, make these accounts more affordable and safe for those low to moderate income folks. There's also an encouragement for financial institutions to offer accounts with alternative ID. So that could be tribal ID, it could be foreign passports, state issued ID, which again should lower the barriers there. So those account standards really do provide a solution, again, that works for financial institutions and for consumers. And Bank On will give financial institutions basically certify an account that meets those standards. Okay, and so the exciting thing about this is just in the last year, we've seen the number of nationally certified Bank On accounts go from 200 to 413 as of today. Okay, so it's a dramatic increase in the accessibility of those accounts. And the exciting thing about Oregon is that at this point, there are 20 certified accounts available, and we are polling our financial, the financial institution members in our coalition, and many of them expect to offer a certified account within the next year. Okay, just in this last couple of months, 3 financial institutions have become nationally certified. One of them being Rivermark Community Credit Union, and the other being Banner Bank. Okay, and we have another one that's just in the works, but they're not ready to announce yet. So the good news is we're seeing more of these accounts opening up, and the accessibility to Bank On certified accounts is going to be available to more Oregonians. Yeah, go ahead. So yeah, so we'll get to the part of the coalition work in just a moment, but our coalition really works not only at increasing the number of accounts available, but also providing opportunities for financial empowerment, right? And so that means looking at ways to collaborate between community organizations and financial institutions, right? To provide those services. I mean, the reality is too that a lot of the credit unions and even banks are providing free financial coaching services. And in some cases, without even an account needing to be opened at that financial institution, right? So, so I hope that answers your question that, yeah, there is that focus on providing that financial coaching, and the coalition is working on efforts like that as well. Yeah. Thank you. So sorry about that. So the question again was around, would you repeat it? And I'll repeat it again. Sure. So the question again is there an incentive for folks that are looking to open an account to perhaps take part in a financial coaching course or class? Yeah. And I don't know if any of the financial representatives here today can speak to that.
At this time, there's not an incentive that I'm aware of through Bank On. And so, but as we continue to build out what that path looks like for somebody. Oftentimes when the path to bank on is through one of those nonprofit organizations that's doing some of that financial health, financial counseling, financial coaching. And that's really, typically that's the avenue. Instead of going from the account to those other services, typically it's from those services, and then we're able to get them over to a financial institution. So it's almost the other way around. So the account is typically a byproduct of the coaching, counseling, financial health, as opposed to those opportunities being a byproduct of the account. Does that help? Perfect. Yep.
And I'll add to that, where I think in this type of relationship with financial institutions and nonprofit organizations, there's often a disconnect. Bank-on's a really good way to build connection so that each of those different types of stakeholders has a investment in each other.
Thanks for that question. There's also industry support for bank-on certified accounts. This is really fantastic. The American Bankers Association has made a public statement calling for all banks of any size to offer a bank-on certified account, because it shows efforts around financial inclusion, and it creates banking relationships that can lead to other products that consumers will use, right? It'll lead to credit opportunities, which is all about really financial empowerment, right? It is asset building opportunities. And so that's really encouraging to see. Check systems, I don't know if you're not a banker, this probably might not be familiar for you, but check systems is kind of the applicant screening system that is used. And we're seeing from the organization who implements that system or who manages that system, FIS, they're also putting together products for financial institutions to be more inclusive, as they screen applicants, to really encourage them to say yes, even if there's history of challenges managing account. In fact, the recommendation is that, this is the recommendation from Bank On as well as check systems, that financial institutions should not deny an account to an individual unless there's an instance of fraud within the last 5 years associated with them. Okay. They should say yes otherwise. Okay, which is great. So even if there are issues holding that account open, well, maybe it was because the financial institution made it hard to keep an account open, right? So that's really encouraging to see. And then I'll finish up just some information about the Bank on Oregon Coalition. As I mentioned earlier, we are a coalition of financial institutions, both banks and credit unions, community organizations, and government agencies. I again represent the Oregon Division of Financial Regulation. And our objectives there are to increase the number of accounts that are certified in Oregon so that people have those opportunities, and then promote financial inclusion. So we meet every other month. We've met virtually over the past 2 years, but we have our first in-person coalition meeting coming up in 2 days, and we're really excited about that. The coalition is open to all who would wish to participate. There's even a financial incentive for nonprofits that want to participate. Okay, so if you would like to join, find me. I will get your contact information and I'll follow up with you. Just to give you an example of some of the work that we've done in the coalition, we have invited folks who represent those underserved communities to really share the lived experiences of the folks that they work with, to help financial institutions kind of understand what those barriers look like, and then to actually put together solutions to be more financially inclusive. And we're also working on developing relationships between organizations that provide a payment to their clients, to have that as part of that program to assist their clients in opening an account. Again, that is a bank on certified account in Oregon. So we're really excited about that work, and I'll go ahead and pass it back to Rebekah.
Thank you, Craig. Guillermo, I'm wondering if you could start us off in helping us understand, from a financial institution's point of view, what motivates the institution to establish an account, and why does it matter to be involved?
Sure. Thank you, Rebecca. Well, I think the primary motivation should be that it's the right thing to do. I mean, that's something that it just naturally makes sense. A little friendly competition too, right? If the institution across the street has it, you want to have it too. So a little friendly competition never hurts anybody. But really, for those of you that don't know, Umpqua Bank and Columbia Bank, we merged. We finally closed the merger March 1st of this year. Took forever to get that done. But one of the great outcomes of that merger was that Columbia Bank already had a bank-owned certified account. So when post-close, it became an easy process. Well, I should say easy. It became an easier process for me to proceed that in getting recertified instead of creating a whole new product. So, and one of those factors that comes into play is profitability, right? Is this a profitable product? And Adam's work and Columbia Bank had already proved that for us. But basically showed that it is a profitable product. You know, there's always a misconception that if you're offering a product that serves low and moderate income folks, that you're not going to make any money, and that's totally false. And Columbia had already proved that. And the second motivation really is that it's a gateway to other products and services. So, you know, you might come in with a bank on account, you establish yourself, and there's other opportunities that could come about, right? You could look into a savings account. Down the road, you might need a car and you get a car loan. And hopefully down the road, you build to where you need a mortgage, and that creates a pathway for you to do that. So it's that entry point into the wealth creation that, many folks had been left behind in that aspect in entering banking. But I'm going to turn it over to Ken, and he can add a little bit more insight.
Yeah, Guillermo, thanks. And Guillermo hit it right on the head, right? First statement, because it's the right thing to do. I mean, that's where all of this starts. And when you look at the stats that Rachel threw out of underbanked and unbanked people out there, that's a problem. And it's a problem for those individuals that at a financial institution, and I'm on the credit union side of the world now, 23 years on the bank side. So I get both aspects of it, but it is something that we want to solve for because it needs to be solved for. And so, yes, it's the right thing to do. It's profitable. It leads to opportunities to cross-sell additional products and services. The biggest part I think that comes with that is the relationship and the trust, and that they now have a safe place to do their banking. And that's really the bookends, right? It's the right thing to do, and look at what it provides well beyond products and services. But that ability to have that trust, as again, Rachel talked through some of the challenges of why people are unbanked or underbanked. The only way we can help solve for those challenges is if we bank them, right? We have to find a way to bank these community members to solve for the increased fees if it's too expensive. The only way to do that is to get them into an institution and find a way to reduce those fees to ensure that they have a safe and healthy place to bank. So that's what I would add to what Guillermo said.
Thank you both. I'm wondering if you could both elaborate on your individual efforts to work on a product. I know Unitas is in a different place in the process than Umpqua is, but Guillermo, if you could share with us a little bit about what that process looked like, and then Ken, if you could share where you all are at and how that's been going.
Sure. Our process started, so I've been with the bank just a little over 2 years now. And when I came to Umpqua Bank, we didn't have a bank on product. So internally, I was starting to pursue that option. Like, where are we? What can we do? Can we take an existing product, tweak it to make it fit? It's not an easy process. You have to get all these internal stakeholders. You have to make a business case analysis and all these things that kind of get in the way for rolling this product out. It was kind of challenging. And the merger was announced. And once I saw that the bank on existed, it was a matter of like, we need to retain that product and get recertified. So that made my process a little bit easier in that way. But I know there's definitely other challenges when you're starting from scratch, and I know Ken will definitely give us some insight in some of those challenges.
Yeah, merger would be great. Just grab the account and move on, right? But I don't think that's going to happen. So it is a challenge. And as Craig alluded to, and he gave a very short list of some of those requirements that are there to have a certified bank on account. Excuse me, it chokes me up just thinking about it. They're non-negotiable, right? So even things like ATM fees. Well, if the maximum ATM fee is $2.50 and you as an institution charge $3 across the board, right, then that's a significant change that needs to be made. And do you make it across all of your accounts? Do you just do it on that account? And then how does that work within your systems? And so that's the challenge at Unitas. We've been working on this for about 1.5 years. We're still working on it because it has to be its own type of account. And it really does require some system changes, a lot of system changes. So you need your product people there, you need your marketing people there, you need your system people there. And it really comes back to, why are we doing it? And we already said why we're doing it, because it's the right thing to do, and we need to help these people get banked. So that's been the challenges that I've talked to other institutions, as well as you're trying to roll these accounts out. Is it has to be so specific, and rightfully so. I'm not disagreeing with the qualifications. I love it. But it does require some significant changes, potentially based on what your financial institution already has in place, the systems that they use. Can you just add a new product? Do you have to change an existing product? How does that work within the system? So it's very involved, much more so than I even thought, until I came into the process and thought, oh yeah, there's a reason why we haven't been successful yet over the last year doing this, because it does take a lot of steps. Worth it in the long run, but it is something to be prepared for. And when you're thinking of financial institutions, why don't they have one? A lot are trying, but it's not just a flip the switch and now there's a bank on account. And there's also considerations of, what do you name the account? And how do we make sure that if somebody is wanting the bank on account, that they get the bank on account when they walk in, because they're not going to come in and say, I want the bank on account. And so there's a lot of training. There's a lot of prep work that needs to happen to be successful. And I know Craig brought up Rivermark, who is rolling their account. I talked to them last week, and I will be meeting with them soon as I know we're ready to go with ours, so that I can just rinse and repeat what they're doing right now. But a lot of work behind the scenes is what it takes.
I think if I can add a little bit to Ken's point there, our account's called the foundation account. It's not called Bank On. So if you come to our bank and you say, I want a bank on, hopefully our training is internal training has worked well enough so they know what that means internally. But our accounts can be open at any branch. I know a challenge for some other institutions early on. One of my previous predecessing banks that I worked at, only a certain branch would know, and they would open the account. But if you went to a different branch, they'd be like, what are you talking about? We don't know what you're talking about, right? So for us, they're available at every branch location. And the second feature that we've added that carried over from Columbia Bank, which I totally love this option, is that if you come in for an account and you don't qualify for just like a traditional checking account, the Bank On is our default account. So you'll automatically qualify for Bank On, unless it's due to fraud, as Craig mentioned. But if you could get into a Bank On. So when you leave our bank, the minimum is hopefully you'll take the Bank On account from us, so you can get yourself into banking with us. Go ahead, Adam. Sure. Yeah.
Just couldn't help myself, because there's one other thing. If you're a bank or credit union who's looking to do one of these accounts, especially in the Pacific Northwest, dormancy fees is also something that has been a big hurdle for banks and credit unions to get over. And if you need, we've actually contacted each of the state regulators in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho to make sure that we had it exactly right, where you can pull back or not, or you don't have to offer the same dormancy fee structure with each of your accounts. You can actually, for your Bank On account, you can strip that fee out, and you will not get in trouble with your state regulators. And I have the emails to prove it. So just yeah. was gonna say, if anyone would like those, we will get them to you.
Adam has the receipts.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
I just wanted to follow up on what Ken and Guillermo just said. There has been a really important conversation within the coalition about folks that show up to a financial institution and say, hey, I'd like to open a bank on account. And the teller doesn't know what they're talking about, right? Because as Guillermo mentioned, the name of their account is the foundation account at Umpqua, right? And so this is part of the work of the coalition, is to kind of break down that barrier, right? If we know that that's the experience that community organizations are typically working with the client, and they're encouraging people to walk into the financial institution and ask to open a bank on account, when that customer has a negative experience, that breaks down the trust that the client has with the community organization, right? So that's an example of what the coalition really is doing to try to remove those barriers, to try to collaborate between financial institutions and community orgs. And then lastly, we're also looking at solutions to make it really a lot easier to find these accounts, right? So, for example, we're working with 211 Info, that resource, to see if we can get the available certified accounts on the 211 Info page, and also put together like a one-pager for community organizations to then refer clients to, right? So how can we make that, how can we reduce the friction there so that folks can more easily get accounts?
So my name is Kwame, and I'm from Africa, and and thanks Rachel for saying the things that my community faces. But I'm adding more on that one. One of the things that we can go to ask for open an account, and one of the things we have, they will say no social security number. They will give us so much barriers before educating us. And this for us becoming a problem. Now we go to other people's names, and so if I have an account under my name, it's not my name, it's somebody else's account, because we don't have the opportunity of, let's have a conversation on this one. That's the first thing that I see on this side to add on that one. And the second was is language, the multi-language. Most of the people that make decisions behind closed doors, the people in the branch, they have no control of how to deal with this kind of situation. And to go beyond this, I'm not checking or saving account. I'm talking about having a lending opportunity. That's what I want to hear from you guys. Because most of the minorities we have in my community, they don't have the things that you require. There's no one gloves fits all. There has to have a different perspective how to do this. We have people work in different businesses, and they need capital to expand their business, and we don't have the opportunity. So we go to Shark Loans, and Shark Loans, they ask for what? Bank statement, 3 months bank statement, you get a loan. So why is it easy on the other side, but on this side is not easy? That's why I'm saying behind closed doors, there's more that we don't know. That's the trust comes in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I cannot answer that whole question because it's a much bigger conversation. But what I will tell you is the many financial institutions and credit unions, Unitas included, are now offering I-10 loans. So if you don't have a social security number, if you have an individual tax ID number, we'll do mortgage loans, we'll do auto loans, we'll do basically anything. And that's really new, and it's pretty rare out there. So that is an opportunity, something that we pushed for. On the language side, when we look at the community, there's a lot of languages that we serve. The one that was the first one that Unitas jumped on was Spanish speaking. And so we launched an entire Hispanic community initiative, hired, I think we're at 47 Spanish speaking employees now. And that's across, a pretty, not a huge footprint when you think about banks and credit unions. But it does take that intentionality, right? Of this is an issue that our community is seeing. What are we going to do about it? How do we fix it? Now, that doesn't solve all of those issues, but it's about if there's something out there that you need, find your local bank, find your local credit union, find somebody that's in the Bank On Coalition and say, here's something that we're struggling with. That's where the coalition is so vital, because it's such a huge resource to then connect you with these different organizations that may be able to answer those questions for you. And that's where the community effort can really make a big impact.
Before I get to that question, I just want to add one more thing, and then we can jump to your question. You're totally right. And it's really important that community organizations like Urban League of Portland, many of you in the room, take a seat at the table to advocate for the clients who need that support. Banking is a mysterious process to most of us. And so as a consumer, if you walk in the door, like Craig said, and you have a negative experience, it might be your last time walking in that door. And so as community organizations, we have a responsibility from the education side of things, but also just the hand-holding and support to say, like, I know this might be a challenging first experience, but I'm going to go with you, or I'm going to give you some of the verbiage that you might hear because it might be unfamiliar. Let's call and find out what kind of documentation you need to have before you go in, or connecting with somebody who is in Bank On so that we can ask some of those providers the questions that we need. There's a lot still to be peeled back, but I'm glad you asked the question. And I think there's a lot of value there in making sure that voices like yours are a part of Bank On. No need to keep quiet.
Okay, to tail on that conversation about the ITIN numbers, and what I also noticed was that the three major credit bureaus do not, I guess, record credit history for use of an ITIN number. So how, as you folks as a bank, going to pull up the credit information of, let's say, somebody who wants capital for a business, or I know they have to personally guarantee the loan most likely, but how do you ascertain someone's credit history if ITIN numbers are not valid with the three major credit bureaus?
That's a great question. And I don't do lending, so I don't know. Just being fair, I'm not in that world, but I know that we offer them. So truly, if you want to find me afterwards, I will get your information and I will get a hold of our lenders and have somebody reach out to you, because it's a valid question. I'm not in that process on a daily basis. So I wouldn't be able to give a really accurate answer, just to be fair. But yeah, let's connect afterwards.
My name is Quaylen Carter. I'm the community lending officer for Umpqua Bank for Oregon and Southwest Washington. So to just answering his question, because I've been in lending for over 20 years, there's a term that's used that's called alternative credit. And so if they're paying other sorts of bills, rent, utilities, credit can be put together. And so we just recently got someone approved who had no credit history at all, but had a social, which is really challenging. But we were able to put that together. I just wanted to just piggyback at Kwame, I think your name is. I wanted to say there's a part of that it was easy to go outside the bank, and I would say that the cost for those options are extremely high. So to me, that doesn't make it easy. It's just a different. They're absorbing the risk and the interest rates that they're being charged. And so one of the things for me when I think about this Bank On is the entry access. I missed the beginning, Rachel, of what you had to say about the Unbanked, but I feel like how are we, people that are coming in, sometimes I feel like the conversation is from an immigrant perspective, but there are people who are coming in from prison. They're coming in after divorce, after chaotic situations. And there's all these other alternatives out there. I can get a bank account with my cell phone company today, right? PayPal. But what the bank has to offer has, there's commitments and there's regulations that would actually afford us, to his point, lower interest rates that are non-predatory. When you get those loans outside, I mean, I've had to go through it myself. What they do is they'll offer you the loan, but they'll cross-sell the crap out of you to where now your payment is additionally $100 more, and they use your desperate situation against you to cross-sell you on additional fees. So to me, it's not I don't see it as easy. I think there's a need for education, because what we think is easy, what we think is our, and we'll go the path we need to go when we got to do something. But where is the communication when you look at Bank On and compared to, how do we educate the community around Bank On versus the alternative? Because the alternative is oftentimes comes at a risk as well financially.
I can speak to from the perspective and the lens of a community organization being a part of Bank On. It's really about, so community organizations already have relationships with folks. They may be working with them through housing services. They may be working through employment services or senior services or whatever your community organization has to offer. That is a great entry point for the education around financial service industry and financial institutions. And that's another way to integrate Bank On products and services and just the access. And also it helps with that warm handoff when it comes to being able to break down some of those barriers between the financial institution and individuals because of the already established relationship with an organization. So Bank On is a great entry point. What I would say is that me personally, I would love to see more community organizations be a part of Bank On so that we can begin to start to break down even more some of these barriers and overcoming some of these challenges, because Bank On is really there. The coalition is there to listen and also be able to put action to words and be intentional about trying to change some of the wrongs and be able to move folks forward with financial mobility and being able to meet some of the needs that they have and begin to really tear down the racial wealth gap and inviting folks to the table. Like, you are welcome here. This is a first step so that we can begin to really change our community overall.
Thank you, Rachel. I want to add one more thing too. My own personal opinion on this is that financial institutions in general don't reflect the diversity of the communities that they're serving. And there needs to be more representation from those communities at decision-making levels within financial institutions. There needs to be accounts that reflect the needs of those specific communities, like Bank On. There's other folks in communities where they don't want to earn any interest on their account, and that's a very specific need that they have. There's folks, we work with IDAs, and they, we have a very specific process and we need an account that's specific to them. Reentry is a huge issue. Rachel and I worked on a project many years ago where Rachel was providing financial coaching and opportunities to folks that were adult in custody. And it's hard to work with someone when you can't offer them a product that aligns with the education you're giving them. So there's a lot of work to be done. And I think the more we can continue at a grassroots level to have these conversations, we're going to make a lot of progress, but there needs to be more representation from those communities at decision-making levels. Did we leave off with anyone mid-thought? Okay. Okay, we'll move on to our next question. Thank you for all the thoughtful conversation. Okay. I feel like this is a good segue. So, let's see here. My last question is, how do financial institutions and other stakeholders get involved in Bank On, which we've kind of been talking about a little bit. Let's see here. Craig, would you let us know what's the best way to get involved in our local Bank On Oregon and or their local coalition if they're out of state?
Yeah, I've kind of already addressed this, but I'll say it again. It's real easy. If you want to be a part of the coalition, you're welcome to join the coalition. So there is no formal process of any means there. We meet every other month, like I said, typically virtually. And if you and your organization are interested, just please see me afterwards. I'll add you to our email distribution list and the invites will be sent. Again, the coalition work kind of looks like taking topics as we've discussed. So one topic that we're working on is developing those integration relationships with organizations like the Department of Corrections. So we're in conversation with the Department of Corrections folks who are working with returning citizens. They have a 6-month financial management course that they're offering. And we're having conversations about how we can help the coordinators, the release coordinators at each facility around the state to make it easier for folks to open accounts, for people to know about Bank On certified account opportunities, and to, again, listen to the needs of people there. So that's an example of the kind of work that we're doing. Again, we, as Rebekah mentioned, we want more folks at the table so we can hear what those needs are. We just had our 2023 member survey, which asked for feedback from both community orgs and financial institutions. Financial institutions said one of their major asks is to better understand the needs of community organizations. Okay, that's why they come, right? They want to serve those communities, and it would be helpful to have those voices present in the coalition.
Jump in on Craig's comments there. As a financial institution, one of the reasons we joined that we're members is because we get to not only hear about the needs of the community, but we also get to hear from other financial institutions that are maybe doing a job better than we are, and we want to learn from that, right? So it's I talked about friendly competition earlier. This is a good place to be competing, right? Because we're, in the end, there's no loser here, right? The community wins when we all collaborate. So that's what I see the benefit that Craig and all the great work he does with the coalition, because then we get a direct insight into a community need. Instead of trying to guess what a community needs, we know what the community needs. Can.
Yeah, and it's funny because Bank On isn't necessarily the destination, right? So when you think about Unitas's journey to Bank On really started in late 2020 with all that was happening, right? All the social unrest. And so a group of credit unions got together and just said, what can we do? What can we do? How can we reach out to the community? How can we serve these unbanked, underbanked groups? And so through that work, then we connected with the Urban League, and then through working with the Urban League, then we got connected to Bank On. And so it really is, that's I know this was how do you, but really why it's so important is because it is such a great connector. It is an amazing connector, so that if you are providing any services, whether it's counseling, coaching, financial services, whatever that is, anybody that you're helping has more than just that need. Every single person has more than just that need. And what the Bank On Coalition allows you to do is to look around the room and say, hey, you can fix that need. That's not mine. I can't do that. But let me introduce you to this person over here. And so how do you, it's really easy, raise your hand, show up. Why it's so important is because it is a connector, and it's not as much of a destination as it is just part of a way to better serve the communities that we're in, better get the voice of the communities that we're in, and then be able to collaborate with other organizations and frankly, other institutions to figure out how we can do that in the most effective way possible.
And then from a community organization lens, being a part of Bank On has been very beneficial. But even before that, so Urban League of Portland has a partnership with 5 different credit unions. And through the partnership, because I was a part of Bank On, I'm always talking about Bank On. I'm always talking about what the needs of or the community are. So the credit unions have brought not only products, we're in the process of trying to build products to help the community right where they're at and meet the needs that they have, but they're also bringing in their expertise. We're bringing coaching to the population that we serve, and also financial coaching. So it's like a really straight line from client to the service provider or the expert. So it really works out for the community organization to be able to tap in, if you will, with Bank On, so that you can get some of those needs met of the community. Another really beneficial thing is with the partnership that we have, we were able to, if you will, share education about Bank On. And like Ken said, then that sparked them for wanting to be a part of Bank On. And some of the other credit unions, they knew about Bank On, but weren't actively had accounts that were certified. So it has blossomed into, again, Bank On being the entry point, but it has blossomed into something better and bigger to be able to help the community. So another way that community organizations can help, they can educate folks, their clients, around banking education, around the benefits of it, and then also around account requirements. So they're kind of that first line of defense, if you will, at the community level before being transferred over. And then also help with that cross comparison around accounts, like what the account offerings are. So they're kind of like that first education provider. And then they can also provide information around workshops and around Bank On, and have that referral piece, right? You're working with the client, you hear what the total picture of the need is, and can share, okay, here are the field of choices, and then here's the intended and unintended consequences to those choices. And then, yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. I want to open it up to questions. I have a couple more, but I want to make sure we leave space. Okay. Coming over.
Hi, everyone. Michelle Manning with the African American Alliance for Homeownership. Just going back to some info you were sharing earlier about how to connect community members with a Bank On certified account. And you mentioned that you're working on getting like a one-pager done and connecting with 211. Today, if a client came in and we wanted to share this information with them, I wrote down Rivermark, but like, how do we connect them to the list of options so that they can make a choice that's right for them?
Perfect. Thanks. So there's a couple of great question. Thank you. You're selling us. So the one option is to go to bankonoregon.org. That is our coalition's website. And there we have a link to partners, both community organizations and to financial institutions. Now, it's a Big 10 coalition, and so we do have some accounts there that are listed that are not Bank On certified. Okay, so for example, Unitas is not quite there yet, but they're getting there. And so they're welcome to have their account information, the account that closest aligns with the national standards. Okay, and then another great resource is joinbankon.org. Joinbankon.org is the national website. They have a little tab at the top. You can click accounts, and it brings up a little map of the US. You click on Oregon, and there are the available accounts with links directly to the financial institution's account. So that is probably the easiest way right now, but we are working on solutions to, again, hopefully make it easier for folks to get connected. Adam. What about the CFE fund? CFEfund.org/bank-on is also a good resource. Yeah, well, that is the joinbankon.org, I believe, is the CFE Fund's website. So yeah, you can, both of those should get you to the right place.
Okay, this might be a silly question, but is there a reason that institutions aren't calling these accounts Bank On accounts? Because if that's what community partnerships are training and telling people about, to me, it seems like a point of confusion and skepticism when I go to an institution and it's named something different everywhere I go.
It's a great question. And it's a long answer, so I won't give the full long answer, but the short answer is that the certified account is not strictly for use with Bank On referrals. Anybody can open it. And so the other part is when you look at the amount of referral business that's coming from Bank On and the coalition, it really doesn't warrant having its own branded name because it just doesn't fit right now. And the other part too is that this may not be, you know, if somebody comes to us from the Urban League, they might not have any association with Bank On, but they came to us through the Urban League because the Urban League knows that we do this work and we have these accounts. So that can also create additional confusion, and it can make people feel excluded if they're not part of Bank On. That doesn't mean we don't want to help you and we don't want to get this account for you. So, but that's what keeps me up at night when I think of Bank On, and I think of these Bank On accounts, because the absolute worst thing that can happen, and I run the branch network, right? So I've got a lot of people out there that are talking to people every single day. And the absolute worst thing that can happen is somebody to walk into a branch. I want to open an account. In their mind, they're saying, I want that Bank On account, but they don't say Bank On. And so the employee says, all right, well, let's sit down. Let's have a conversation. Tell me about yourself. And nothing through that conversation says, oh, it should be the foundation account. So we don't open the account that in their mind they were coming for, but we didn't know that that's what they wanted. And now they're not in a certified account, and now they're getting overdraft fees, or it's not what they expected. That experience, it literally makes me sick to my stomach. And so that's part of what we're trying to figure out is how do we name it? I think what Guillermo had said earlier, and talking to other institutions, it's really about training. And it's really trying to source where that member is coming from. How did they learn? Why are they picking us right now? And really doing a good job of that source coding, because then we can say, well, I work with a community, you know, I was referred to it by the Urban League or by this other association. Okay, so let's talk about that. Where do we fit into that? And then we can organically get to that account. But I said I was going to give you the short answer, and I didn't give you the short answer. I gave you the long answer, but yeah. So did that help answer your question a little bit? Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm part of a nonprofit that has a group of underbanked immigrants and refugees with small businesses. And so I went to bankonoregon.org as you were talking about it, and I saw lots of resources for them to go get their bank. But how about for me as a nonprofit who has pools of people who may need, it may be a Bank On account, but it may be a different type of product, maybe even something that doesn't exist yet. Is that what the Bank On Coalition can help with? If so, how do I join? Because it didn't have anything about that. And yeah, that's my question there.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not something that we've discussed as a coalition, is kind of that small business support. Is that kind of really what you're looking for? Yeah. I don't know, gentlemen, if you have something else to add there.
I can, and then Guillermo probably has a better answer. But one place to start, if you're looking for what resources you need and the groups that you're working with, is go to a financial institution that is Bank On certified, because they've obviously demonstrated the willingness to say, hey, we want to help in this space. And to your point, it may not exist yet, but as we're talking about today, as these Bank On accounts get certified more and more, those didn't exist a couple years ago in a lot of those institutions. So more so than ever in my almost 30 years of being on the financial services side, the openness to finding ways to help. And if we need to create products, if we need to expand what IDs we accept, like tribal IDs, that's a new one for us. It's now a regular certified primary piece of identification. So some of it is not a short path. It may be a little bit of a longer path, but talk to your financial institution, talk to a Bank On institution, Google me. My phone number's on the internet. I'll be happy to talk to you about it.
No, and I appreciate that. So, because I'm interested in talking with as many banks as it takes to get the right product or the right solution for these people. So is there a title at these of a person, or is there like a role, or is it literally walk in, talk to a banker and say, who at your institution can help me?
That's probably the easiest way to start, because every institution will have that land maybe somewhere a little differently. So it wouldn't be advisable to say this is the title, but go in, talk to a branch manager and say, this is what I'm looking for. And that'll at least get the conversation started.
I want to add too real quick. Sorry, Guillermo. one of the financial institution types that's not represented in this space are CDFIs. And so there's often nonprofit CDFIs. I know a lot of credit unions have CDFI ratings, but there's often a space to do really creative lending through CDFIs. So you could look up CDFIs in Oregon and find like Craft 3, for example, does small business lending, all sorts of things like that.
Rebekah just beat me to it. But to add to Ken's previous point, he was spot on everything that he said. As far as a traditional bank, the term that you might want to look for is community reinvestment officer is one. Those roles are different within each bank, but similar enough that somebody can point you in the right direction. If it's not the CRA officer, it could be someone else within our institution. So if you reached out to our CRA officer, Adam Stein, Adam would talk to me and say, Guillermo, this is probably on your more up your alley. Will you take that on? So that's kind of the partnership we have internally, but you'll have to navigate that, with other financial institutions. But, connecting with CDFIs, I think that's a great next step because they've already kind of, developed some of that infrastructure already that can help you plug in right into it. Sure.
I mean, there's so many names out there. It's like, you almost have to give kind of like a code name or something like a 101 or something, how they have 401ks, 403bs, and everybody kind of knows that that's a retirement account instead of like a foundation account. But that's just my comment.
Struggle is real.
Yeah. Understood.
Such a great conversation. Curious, Craig, is there an opportunity for a community organization to share some input to Bank on Oregon about how they might want to integrate Bank on into their programming? Is it beyond becoming a member?
Right. Thank you, Brendan. Brendan Butler is with UMCA as well and is part of our integration team that's looking at creative ways to connect programs that provide a payment to clients to have part of that program be account opening, right? That's really kind of the way that you can make a difference, make a larger difference in that unbanked rate is to have large scale integration projects, right? And so if you're a community organization that does provide some form of payment to your clients, we are definitely interested in providing you with the information you need to either at the very basic level, give you that list of accounts that are available, but also provide you with whatever assistance we can offer. Maybe that's connecting you with a couple of different financial institutions, representatives, to help you with that account opening process as you work with your clients. Does that answer your question, Brendan?
I was just going to add this small business piece. I work for Beneficial State Bank. We're a CDFI, but I know a lot of, like, I'm sure Unitas and Columbia. If you do go to a bank and ask about small business loans and they're not able to help, we refer people a lot of times to people like Craft 3, Meso, people say it differently. I mean, different organizations that if you find a bank that cares about getting people kind of building relationships and entry level, that's a good, then you don't have to go to each individual CDFI. So just a thought.
Just before Adam, if anybody wants to know what CDFI stands for, it's a Community Development Financial Institution. So it's a designation that institutions have to go through that looks at how they serve the communities they're in, how they do their lending, how they do their account opening and get certified. And so it's a big umbrella that essentially says we're stamping this institution that their business practices meet what we feel is appropriate for the underbanked and unbanked communities and people out there in those communities.
This question would be for Rachel or Craig. We'd love to hear your thoughts on even just some of the other work that the Bank On Initiative has done, like the listening session. I thought, just remember, it seemed to me that was very powerful. Thing that Bank on Oregon did, and really learned a lot from it, from what I could tell, and it seems to be still guiding even the initiative to this day.
Yeah, so Bank on Oregon again was proactive with gathering did a listening session with several different community organizations to really start to find out and listen to like what are the challenges that our communities are facing within these community organizations. And from the listening sessions, some of those learnings were that around the distrust and around not feeling heard or seen at financial institutions. And so what the coalition has done is we got a really great detailed summary of the listening sessions and started like piece by piece going through and bringing the steering committee brings to the coalition different aspects that were pointed out within this listening session of points of how we can as a coalition begin to address what the disparities are or what how the community is like seeing Bank On. So it's a really proactive approach to being able to really make some change within the coalition. So that's what I have for that.
Thanks. The report put together as a result of the listening session is available at the Bank on Oregon website. It's under news and research, so you can take a look at that. And as Rachel mentioned, we took kind of the learning from that listening session and really tried to use that to guide our coalition meetings. So for example, we invited, well, one of the things that came out was that folks who work in financial institutions don't represent the communities that they serve. And so we invited someone from BankWorks, which is an organization that helps to train new staff and recruit new staff. And they kind of shared about the efforts that they're taking to really recruit and increase the diversity that we see in financial institutions. Another example of the way we kind of took that listening session and tried to apply it was to invite back a couple of community organizations that serve culturally specific groups. So for example, we had Vera Lewis from, I believe, PCRI or Dev Northwest, PCRI. We had Demas Martinez from the Warm Springs Community Action Team. And we had, help me with the name of Allison. Yeah, from Northwest Access Fund. And they came in and told their stories. They told the stories of their own personal experiences, as well as the experiences that their clients have walking into financial institutions. And, when we have financial institutions present in the room, that's important listening that's taking place, right? And so, so that listening session really has guided the work that the coalition has been doing. And I would really encourage you to check it out on the Bank on Oregon website.
Just a quick comment. The topic of the bankers should look like or speak the language of the communities that they serve, right? And conceptually, that makes perfect sense. I want that for Umpqua Bank and other financial institutions. But as you can imagine, there's a challenge in meeting that. And we have open positions for community home lending officers that we can't find a person to fill those, because everybody's trying to hire the same folks. So I'm definitely going to pick his brain because he's hired 42 people that can speak Spanish. So I want to find what the secret sauce Ken is using for his recruitment. But we're a bank with over 300 branches covering multiple locations, geographies where people are different. They look different, then they talk different, right? Different languages. So it's something we're definitely working on. That's part of our CBA that we committed, that we said, hey, we're gonna improve the diversity at our bank, at our locations in general. So just want to know that it's not going on deaf ears. That's something that we're working towards, but just know that it is quite a challenge. It's not as easy as it may sound.
And I can just briefly, it's really easy to say that we're going to make sure that our branches look like the communities that we serve. And it's a much more difficult thing to make it a reality, as Guillermo said. without giving away all the secrets. But truly it's just a commitment, right? So we did a survey of the organization. We did a survey of the board. Where do you feel like we're at in serving these communities? And then it was just a requirement. So when we talk about hiring Spanish speaking employees, the need for that in every single location, we have Spanish speaking employees in every single location, every single branch location, our call center, our virtual branch, our lending departments. And how do you do it? You post the position Spanish required. And we change how we recruit, we change where we recruit, and we be very, very specific. And so that takes a long time for those wheels to start moving. But once you can really make progress there, and then as you're hiring on employees that speak Spanish, well, then we need you to help us know what needs to be translated, right? And translating it correctly, not just Google Translate. And so using that, and what are the resources, and then also helping our employees that are coming in that are Spanish speakers. They likely don't know the banking vernacular in Spanish because people don't speak that at home, right? You only speak that when you're in a branch. And so we also identified very quickly that even though we're hiring on really talented, ambitious Spanish speaking employees, there's a lot of training that has to happen with them and helping us understand, and then helping them. Because just because you speak a language at home doesn't mean you know any of the terms. And if you work at a bank, right? The first 6 months there, you're just learning your first job. You're just learning what everything means, right? What's a HELOC? What's DTI? What's right? All of these things. And so that's it. It was a commitment. And the long story is it's a commitment, and we make it happen, and we hold ourselves accountable to it.
Well, the good news is that you have a lot of people with transferable, relatable skills in community organizations, and some of us wouldn't mind working in financial institutions. Are there any questions from the chat? Okay. Well, we're at time. Thank you so much to our panel. Thank you so much to our audience. Feel free to stop any of us if you have additional questions, and have a good rest of your day.